Welcome to the Winning Platform Owner Podcast, the podcast that is dedicated to enabling ServiceNow platform owners with valuable knowledge, tools, and strategies. Having an awesome ServiceNow team is a huge advantage, but not everyone is blessed with having or being on a good team. And if you're the ServiceNow platform owner, then it's very likely the team is your responsibility. If your team is struggling, it's up to you to get in there and help get the team back on track and on its way to being a great team. So, if you're ready to hear more about how to help a struggling ServiceNow team, then let's go. Hey, welcome to the show. I'm Ben Pierce, your host on the Winning Platform Owner Podcast. And since this is our first episode of the new year, happy 2024. I wish you nothing but the best, both personally and professionally. Hope you see a lot of success this year in 2024. Can't believe it's 2024 already. Seems like 2023 just flew by, but here we are. Looking forward to a great year. Happy to be doing the podcast. I love doing these podcasts for you, and I hope they do help you to become a more successful ServiceNow platform owner. That's the goal. So I invite you to subscribe to the podcast. Use it as one of the tools for your success. Well, in this episode, we're talking about helping a struggling ServiceNow team get back on track. And as we said in the introduction, if you're a ServiceNow platform owner, chances are you are responsible for that ServiceNow team at your organization. And if you don't have a team that's firing on all cylinders, if they're kind of struggling to work together as a team, if they're struggling with their skills and things like that, it can make it really difficult. On the flip side of that, if everything is working well and they're really working together as a good team and the skill sets are there and they're able to communicate and all of these different things, it's a game changer for the ServiceNow platform. It really is. So if you have a ServiceNow team that's struggling, you really have to be focused on getting it back on track. You can't just put up with things. You have to, as a ServiceNow platform owner, be focused on improving that team, getting it to where it is firing on all cylinders, where it's really working well and the team is working well together and they're delivering value on cadence and all of that. You have to focus on that. If your team's struggling, you can't ignore it. So the first thing I'd like to do is cover some red flags, if you will, around struggling teams. These are common issues and they indicate a team is struggling or maybe beginning to struggle. You know, sometimes it's very obvious that your team's struggling. They just can't deliver things, and so that's obvious. Sometimes it's not so obvious, and in those cases, I like to think about these few things and look for any red flags on the team to see, okay, maybe they're just starting to struggle, and we need to just get out in front of something and make a correction before it gets too bad. Here we go. So the first one is time-consuming discussions on how a problem should be solved on the platform. If you're starting to see your team just kind of churn on that stuff and take longer than they really should to determine how to proceed and how to solve an issue on the platform or how to solve a business problem on the platform with good architectural principles and good development principles, if they're always discussing that and churning on it, that's a sign that you have a struggling team or they're maybe starting to struggle a little bit. Second one is time-consuming discussions on what work should be done. If the team is involved in those discussions and really churning on those discussions, that's another sign that you're struggling or starting to struggle. Third one is miscues and miscommunications. This can happen in a lot of different places and in a lot of different ways, so you have to look for it. But it's pretty common to see it show up as poor quality in test or worse in production. things get into production and cause incidents, and it's because of miscommunications around somebody trampling on somebody else's configuration or development work, or perhaps miscues in sequence in terms of how things are promoted. If you're seeing stuff like that, that's a sign that your team is starting to struggle as well. Fourth, you can't get into a delivery rhythm. No matter what you do, it always seems like something is messing up the sprint, or you just can't seem to get that team moving together and into a rhythm. That's obviously a sign of a struggling team. And then finally, you can't seem to deliver consistent value. So you might be in a good work rhythm where you're moving through the sprint and all the ceremonies are working correctly, but you're not really delivering a lot of value every sprint, and maybe the value that you are delivering is starting to diminish over time. That's a sign that your team may be starting to struggle. Again, if you have a struggling ServiceNow team, you're probably seeing one or many of these types of things happening. But if your team isn't struggling and you're saying, well, yeah, I have a pretty healthy team, I think, you can kind of use those to as a litmus test, I guess, to assess whether you might be starting to struggle in some areas. So let me run through them really fast one more time. Time-consuming discussions on how a problem should be solved on the platform. Time-consuming discussions on what work should be done. Miscues and miscommunications. Can't get into a delivery rhythm, and you can't deliver value consistently. All right, so how do we help the struggling team? I'm going to cover 3 things that are very important in helping the struggling ServiceNow team. And as I cover them, you're probably going to think to yourself, well, how are these even related to some of those flags that we just covered? And I'm here to tell you that in my experience, all roads lead back to these 3 things. So if you're having struggles with your team in various different areas, it probably tracks back to one of these things. So let's start out with the first one. Get the right people in the right seats. You remember Jim Collins and his books. This is a big concept in those, and it's very applicable to the ServiceNow team. What does it mean, the right people? We're talking about more than skills. We're talking about the right people first. So what you need to think about is, do I have the right type of person in that seat? Is it somebody who takes initiative? Is it someone who takes pride in their work? Do they take care of those around them? Those are the they're almost cultural type of questions, right? But that's the first thing that I'm talking about when I talk about making sure you have the right people. The reason that part is important is because it takes a lot of discipline as a ServiceNow developer, a ServiceNow admin, a platform architect, any of these different roles that should be on the team. It takes a lot of discipline to kind of swim in your lane and help the team. It takes a lot of discipline to do things according to good practice when you're under pressure. So you need the right people culturally. Then you definitely need the right skills. So those people can't be just great cultural fits for the team. They need to be skilled. And so you have to have the right skills. And then you need to have them in the right roles. So it could be that you have a very strong ServiceNow developer, but they're not as strong in the architect role, and you happen to have them as a platform architect. You might need to consider changing their role, changing how they operate on the team. So that's the first one. It's really all about the people. Get the people right, and the team will begin to start to take care of itself. Not totally take care of itself, but you took a big step in the right direction when you get the people or when you get the right people in the right seats. So you're looking for that cultural fit and the right roles and the right skills. And sometimes I'm asked the question, well, I have this team already. How do I really assess them? And there are a multitude of different ways you can check for skills, right? And just the quality of their work and all those things. But one question I would ask myself, and I tell other people to ask themselves, is would you hire your same people again in those same roles? And if you even pause at that question, more than just to think about the next role and the next person, then chances are you might have an issue that you need to deal with. So the right people in the right seats, that's the first thing you can do to help a struggling team. The second thing is all about communication. And so there are 3 things that you need to communicate, and communicate relentlessly, really. The first is your vision, the second is your strategy, and the third are your expectations. So you need to communicate. Answer the questions: what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And how are we doing it? And do that relentlessly over and over again. The bigger the team you have, the more you have to communicate so people understand kind of where they fit in and how their role contributes. So the second thing is clearly communicating. You know what's interesting about this? It has nothing to do with something that a team member does. This is all about you as a ServiceNow platform owner, all about you as a leader. So you want to communicate that vision so everybody knows what we're doing, the strategy around it, so everybody understands what are we doing and why are we doing it and how are we doing it. And then set your expectations. Clearly communicate what you expect out of the team. And if you're doing this on a regular basis, it clears the fog for the team, but it also enables them. Remember, you have some disciplined people now. You have culture there and some good people, the right people on the bus, the right people in the right seats. They've got the right skills. They're in the right role. And now you are clearing the fog in terms of vision, strategy, and expectations, and you're allowing them to be disciplined in how they attack those things that you've laid out and how they get things accomplished. So that's number 2, clearly communicating vision, strategy, and expectations. The third one is all about just fanatically disciplined delivery cadence, is really what it boils down to. You have to, as a leader, set your expectations and operate in a way that is very disciplined from a delivery cadence perspective. What am I talking about? First part of that is you have to have informed demand management. So all of the requests for enhancements that you get, all of the new ideas and great ideas for what the ServiceNow platform could do, has to be informed by your strategic priorities, the way that the platform fits into the enterprise architecture and the strategy around what it's trying to accomplish for the business in terms of business value and business objectives, and how you prioritize all of that stuff. Informed demand management, right? You have to do those things. And then you have to have good value flow. What do I mean by that? You have to have regular sprint cadence. You have to have regular release cadence into production. And those 2 things are really tough to be disciplined at, especially as you have different people kind of breathing down your neck or resetting priorities for you. There can be a number of things that make it hard to be really disciplined around your sprint and release cadence. But if you as a platform owner, as a leader, do not relentlessly, that's the word for the day, right? Relentlessly enforce that disciplined cadence, you'll start to see the team struggle because they get off balance, they get off rhythm. I think about the times when, have you ever been in the car where you are helping somebody learn how to drive a stick shift and they're jerking back and forth because they can't quite get the clutch right and the timing right? That's what you're doing to the team when you shake up that cadence. And so you want to be really disciplined as a platform owner around that. And then finally, the last part of that is making sure that you stay disciplined as a leader around the regular improvement sprint. What am I talking about there? Well, if you're familiar with agile processes and, for example, the scaled agile framework, you're familiar with this idea of this improvement sprint that happens every so often. Some organizations do it every quarter, some every, more often than that or less often, but they do it regularly. Pretty common to see it every quarter. And basically that sprint is all about innovation. It's all about maybe removing technical debt or just sharpening tools, right? Getting some extra training, getting some extra knowledge, going to a conference, those sorts of things. So as a ServiceNow platform owner, you need to make sure that you are including that for your team. So this was a big one. Fanatically disciplined delivery cadence. It means informed demand management, making sure you're staying true to strategy, making sure you're prioritizing appropriately. And then it means value flow, regular sprint cadence, regular release cadence, and regular improvement sprints so that your team can sharpen their tools, so they can innovate, so they can remove technical debt where needed. Well, that's the content I had for you today. If you found value in this podcast, consider subscribing to it. Consider sharing it with others who would find it valuable as well. I'm always up for continued conversation, and this is a topic where a lot of times you need some continuing conversation. So if you're struggling with helping your struggling ServiceNow team, feel free to find me on LinkedIn, reach out to me there. I'm more than happy to discuss things with you, even do a one-on-one with you if you want to, and try and help you get things on the right track. That's what I'm here for. Thank you for listening to this episode, and we will see you next time.